Hi, y'all. I am just going to share screen. So thank you again for everyone who is joining us for today. This is our session, which is from trauma to transformation. And um, our facilitators here, we have, oh, so, hi everyone. I'm Lori Bang. My pronouns are she, her. I am coming from St. Paul, Minnesota. I currently graduated last year from Harding High School, and I attended Concordia University and transferred to Century College. So, a lot of schools. And I am 18 years old. And one interesting thing about me is I wrote a book about 4 or 5 years ago, and it reached 1 million readers. Actually, 2 millions now. So it's a good thing for me. And I will pass it to Natasha.
Hi, I'm sorry. My name is Natasha Lawyer. My pronouns are she, her. I am from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am 20 years old. I graduated from Southwest High School in 2019. And from in fall of 2019 to about this fall, I was attending St. Thomas University. Um, I really enjoy music. I really enjoy helping people, which is why I became a part of Bridgemakers. Um, I feel like, it's our duty as young people to try and make the present as best as we can in order for it to be good for the people that come after us. So thank you. And that's why I'm here. I'm going to pass it off to Darian.
Hi everyone, I am Darian Lofton and my pronouns are he, him. I am currently living in St. Paul. I graduated from Harding High School and I am attending Century College in the fall. Um, I so I already said I'm from St. Paul. I'm currently 19 and some interesting things about me. Um, I I'm really into advocacy and stuff like that. So um I do a lot of like youth movement and things like that. And that's how I became associated with bridge makers. So yeah.
Thank you. And this is our facilitation team. Um, and I will pass it to Darian.
Okay. Um so today our icebreaker, you it's obviously on the screen. If you could just if you could make a hybrid animal, which two animals would you choose? And your name, your school, or your organization that you're from, and your pronouns, and you can just drop it in the chat if you can do that.
And while we wait for people to drop theirs in the chat, we facilitators and our other Bridgemaker friends can share in the icebreaker too. If I could make a hybrid animal, I would make it's probably really weird, but I would make like a horse with dragon wings, kind of like a Pegasus, but like it has like a looks like a dragonish. So that's what I would do. Um, and I'll pass it to Natasha.
If I could make a hybrid animal, I would choose um, like a snake and a bird. I love reptiles. I think they're so cool. And I love that they shed their skin. It kind of makes me think about like transformation and becoming a new person every time I think about snakes. Um, and a bird because like why wouldn't like you wouldn't want to fly? Like come on. And there's no such thing as flying snakes. So I'll pass it off to Darian.
So I actually would not like mix two animals. I'd just make a three-headed dog or three-headed wolf because I love wolves, and I think that would be so dope to see a three-headed wolf. So yeah.
We can read some in here too. Someone, let's see. Amy says she would do two animals, would be a panda and poodle. So small panda dog. That's so cute. um, let's see. We have Nancy Thomas, she, her. She's coming from Respect You and Me. We have Shannon Smith, she, her, assistant principal at Mickelson Middle School in Brookings, SD, South Dakota. I don't know my states like that. We have Barbara Murphy, high school for recording arts, Panda and Hippo, Fuzzy and Fierce. Nice. Also her younger daughter's favorite animals. Two favorite animals. Juraria JJ said a cheetah and a bear, the best hybrid of fast and strong. Wow, I did not think of that. All right, we can keep moving on. Oh, nice. All right, so who we are and why we're here. We are Bridgemakers. So me, Darian, Natasha, as well as our couple friends in here, Jawaria and John. We are from Bridgemakers. So Bridgemakers is a holistic civic, social, and financial capacity building platform which amplifies the stories and mentors the leadership of Black, Brown, and otherwise marginalized youth. We build bridges between young artists, activists, entrepreneurs with experienced leaders to engage intergenerational collaboration and breaking cycles of miseducation, poverty, violence, and addiction. Together, we're reimagining and revitalizing marginalized communities to flourish with passion, purpose, positive relationships, and power. And we are excited to host this breakout session for you all to talk about trauma to transformation. All right, so passing it to Natasha.
So meeting excuse me so much. Meeting students' basic needs, especially mental health, is essential before a school can become an academic, enriching environment for young people. Especially, since people don't tend to listen to Black and Brown voices, it's really important to have a space, especially in an academic space, to like voice what you're feeling, because that can really stunt the way that you learn. So here is what some of our ambassadors are going to say about our experiences with mental health and education. So I'm going to pass it to Darian.
So now I share my trauma story, I believe. So when I started high school in about ninth grade, I lost three very important people to me, and it was like so many things were happening all at once, and I went to a new school, and I didn't feel there was as many opportunities for me. It was actually not the high school that I graduated from. It was a different high school. And just being like at a new school, and then I just lost three people, like I was going through a lot, and I was struggling in high school like so much. And it felt like it was so much pressure. So my grades were kind of like sinking, and I didn't have many opportunities to like speak with counselors or anything, because they didn't like really offer like anything like to do with like loss of family members or like counseling for that sort of thing. So I just went through school like ninth grade, it was just like so bad, and then 10th grade it was kind of like everything was still going on, like I still had a lot of stuff going on in my life, related to trauma, um, especially with like my mom and stuff. So it was just like the first 2 years of high school was like a huge struggle, and I just had to kind of like pull myself along and try and get through. But my yeah, everything was just pretty bad at that time. And then um but 10th grade I did eventually end up going to a new school, but things still weren't different because I didn't know that there was actually a grief class offered. But then like the end of my 10th grade year and the beginning of my 11th grade year, um I was just put into it. I don't remember what happened. I think one of the counselors, um I spoke with one of the counselors about something, and then I ended up just being in it because they heard about it. And after I took um grief counseling at the end of 10th grade year and the beginning of my junior year, things kind of shot up for me, and went everything was getting a little bit better and better slowly as I was going through school. My grades were rising, and it was easier to like communicate and speak with people, and like actually try more to be more involved with like the things I was doing in school. And just because the grief counseling, like I think I went um a probably D, C, F average to like A's and B's my junior year, and then eventually graduating with A's and B's my senior year, and actually graduating high school because ninth and 10th grade, I honestly didn't believe that that was going to happen or that could have happened. And it was just a lot about not believing in myself, and not taking like not getting an opportunity to be a part of something like that, so I could better myself and like feel better about things that was going on in my life. And after my grief counseling, that I guess that was where the transformation happened from the trauma, and things got much better for me, and I persevered and pushed through, and now I'm a high school graduate going to college this fall. So yeah, and I think I will pass it on to Natasha for her story.
Um, so I started talking to therapists at a pretty young age in the school setting. When I was 8, my mom died. And so right away, they just decided to put me into a therapist. And I just remember being really young and having this woman ask me so many questions. And I didn't receive very much. And, it was on and off up until I was in middle school. And I remember having all of these really, really strong feelings that I couldn't pinpoint. Like I was always feeling really tired or just really sad, and I couldn't figure out why. And I would just be sitting there and I didn't understand what I was feeling as a young kid. And I talked to one of my school counselors and I told her like, hey, like I think I'm depressed. Like I don't know what to do about this, but I have all of these feelings. And so again, I started going weekly to school sessions where they would continuously ask me, so why do you think you feel like that? Well, what do you want to do about that? And of course it was a lot of talking, but nothing was pushed behind that. And so all of this that I had, from like my elementary school and middle school, of course I carried with me into high school. And since I wasn't receiving, the resources that I needed, and early on, those problems still continued in high school. So like that depression and that anxiety that like increased by like a tenfold. Like I wasn't with a mom or like a dad. So all of my home life, it felt very, very inconsistent. And I didn't have that like security and that stability to go to. Um, and so, I turned to other things that weren't the best for me and weren't in my best interest. And when I was a sophomore in high school, I got a therapist that was provided through my school clinic. Um, and I was so grateful to be introduced to my school clinic because I had found out about medication, good therapy, really taking care of myself, like taking care of my body and figuring out what that really meant and what I really needed. And one thing that my school clinic emphasized is that they did not work through the school. All of the resources that they provided to me and to other students that were in need like me were not provided through the school. Um, so when I had therapy changes and everything, therapist changes, none of that was led through, by the school. The school therapists were only really given to students who had insurance, sadly. And I didn't have insurance. So I was very, very thankful for my school clinic. So I was still struggling my sophomore year, but I got introduced to this great therapist named Brandon. And as you can see, I'm a Black woman. And it was the first time I had a therapist who was Black. And when I sat down, he had told me all about himself before he had asked questions about me. And it really kind of opened a different door into what mental health could be and what, healing myself meant. It allowed me to get into a more vulnerable space where I could really figure out where my hurt was lying and what I really needed to get through that. And obviously it wasn't easy. I ended up getting on medication for my depression, and even going through that was hard. But I still had that stability and that source to go back through to help me get through that. My therapist helped me so much that I ended up getting parents realistically, and getting an even greater resource of stability. It was crazy to watch myself when I began high school being this person that couldn't verbalize how I feel, couldn't really get through my problems, transforming into somebody else who was able to help other people with their own problems. It it gave me hope for my own future, and futures for people who aren't like me. When I see people who are struggling, I know what it's like to feel that hurt and that pain, and I can empathize with them, and it helps them to know somebody else who's not struggling as much, has felt the way that they are before. They're not as alone. So that is where transformation begins. It all begins with one person who can help everyone else. So I'm going to pass it to Darian.
Okay, so I think now we're going to get into the breakout sessions, and so everyone will be put in rooms to discuss questions for 7 minutes. You'll each will be with one of the facilitators, me, Natasha, Lori, or I think Joaria as one of our other people who will be facilitating, I believe. While you're in the rooms, you just respond. We'll just respond to questions by using sticky notes, and pick one person to share your group's responses, as you can see on the screen. So yeah. I think I'll pass it to Lori for the breakout rooms.
Yes. Thanks, Darian. And I just want to give snaps to Natasha and Darian again for being vulnerable and sharing your personal stories about getting resources while being in school. So I just want to snaps again for thank you for sharing the stories. I know it was very personal. And now we want to hear your experience. And with these, before I move on to the next one, I want to make sure everybody is on the same page. So if you are on a phone, you may have to download an app called Jamboard. It is Jamboard. We will be using that when we go into the breakout rooms. So if you're on a phone, make sure you have it downloaded. You can go on it on if you're on a computer, so that's okay. But we can go and find out why we're using Jamboard. So we are going to talk about how can schools support young people. So we have 2 questions that you will talk about in these rooms. So the first one that you will talk about is, how has your school provided mental health resources and access to other basic needs and like housing food. The second question is, what barriers have you encountered while trying to meet these needs? And there will be in total of 4 rooms, and you will meet in there for 7 minutes, and then we'll be coming back, and you will have one main person to share your responses, like Darian said earlier. And I will show the Jamboard as well. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you haven't used it before, here it is. So as you can see, the question is there, and on the bottom, the bottom right of the slide, it'll say, please respond in the next slide. You are welcome to respond in the chat as well. Um, and then in here, so it's blank, which means that everybody will be putting their response to the first question into the second slide. And so how to use the sticky notes. If you look on the left side of your screen, there is all these tabs. So you click on the fourth tab, which is a sticky note. You could put your response down. So it'll be like, you could change any colors: green, blue, pink, orange, or clear. And you could put it in, and it'll always go on the top left, and you can move it around anywhere. So it's pretty easy. I will go ahead and share this, and hopefully Amy will be ready to open the breakout rooms for 7 minutes.
We are
just
ready.
a second, Lori.
Sorry.
And also just as Amy said in the chat, if anyone did not see, if you can't access Jamboard, you can use the Zoom chat to type in your response to the questions, just so everyone knows.
Yep. And I'm sure if you go into the breakout rooms, somebody will have access to the Jamboard, and they can put your response in the chat into the Jamboard. If you respond in the chat while you're in the breakout rooms, we will not have access to it. So make sure that every response that goes through is in the Jamboard. Any other questions before we let you all go?
Just to clarify too, Jamboard is just a link, so you don't have to, it's not an application. So the link that Lori put into the chat, if you just click that, it'll automatically take you to the Jamboard.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to open rooms. We've had a little bit of problems that sometimes there's a countdown on the room. You can ignore the countdown. We'll let you know when you have a few minutes left. And it's for how many minutes, Lori?
For 7, and
okay,
there should be,
I'll keep track of time.
Yes, and there should be each of the leaders in there. So me, Darian, Natasha, and Juwaria should be in there. Each. Yes. Sounds good.
Yes. Let's just, okay, here we go.
Thank you.
You should be invited to your rooms now.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I realized that we had such a short amount of time to discuss 2 questions. I could like see if we could get like probably 2-3 minutes to discuss the next question. I don't know. Let me see how we're doing on time. Let's see.
You have about 25 more minutes, so I'm happy to open them back up if that's helpful.
Yeah, actually we could do like just like a large share out group instead with this next question. So, and people can respond in chats as well. So there's a lot of responses in the second question. So now with this next question, the question is, what barriers have you encountered while trying to meet these needs? So feel free to talk, or you can say in the chat.
I'm sorry, I realized my mic was off. Something that came up in my group a lot was a lack of resources. That, they have some of these programs and these things, but it's just having enough of it to go around for people.
Right. Yeah, I would say one huge barrier I was just saying in my group was that students are not being heard enough. A lot of students really have to advocate so much just to get what we need. And sometimes that takes like a whole nother school year. And that's like students are already moving on after a whole school year. It's just like upsetting to see that sometimes we have so much hope that a lot of the adults and faculty team don't really listen.
I think one of the big barriers I've seen is, especially during COVID, is just being able to reach, um, oftentimes reach students who need support. I think oftentimes those who are most in need, um, it's difficult they're the most difficult students to find, and to have access to. Um, just be yeah, and in particular if you're having a mental health crisis, it can be really hard to reach out. um,
Did your school have a social and emotional learning program? Were the teachers and the adults trained in the social and emotional learning skills?
are you asking me or the students?
The students.
I can speak on about it. My school, I don't know. I don't think so. We would have like designated like social workers. There was like a clinic where we had like a social worker there. It was offered to students, but we didn't. I don't think we had like teachers and faculty teams who were actually trained for like to offer mental health resources or services.
That's probably why you didn't feel that they were listening to you. It would be my guess anyways.
Something that I talked about in the last breakout group was one of the one of the barriers is the fact that like we have to do things through our parents. So if students want to talk to a therapist at our school or a counselor at our school, they need to get permission from their parents, and their parents get updated on what those conversations look like, which first of all is very invasive. But second of all, if you have parents who are not willing to understand your mental health or the support you need, you're not able to get that. And I think one of the other barriers at our school is the lack of consistency. There was a suicide at our school last year, but then COVID happened just like 2 months after, and all of the mental health resources that our schools brought in, including like counselors and like pets and just like other support that they brought in, they took it all away, and they were able to sustain it throughout the pandemic. And now that we're back in school, we still don't have any of those resources. So I think it's just like a really like a hard thing to juggle, because we get resources and they get taken away, and then students are kind of left to deal with these things on their own, just as they were before.
Do you know why the school needed your parents' permission? Was it because they needed the insurance coverage to cover the cost, or?
So when I was talking to our dean about it, it wasn't about the insurance cost. I think it was more, so I'm not sure about the law exactly, but like because we're underage, because we're under 18, like you have to go through your parents before you can like get mental health support. I'm pretty sure that was the reason why.
Yeah, I totally empathize with that, because I grew up in a family where I wasn't heard, and I would have appreciated being in a school where someone would listen to me and I'd have a safe environment to express myself. So I'm right with you there. That's why I want to develop a program that sits on top of social and emotional learning programs and provides the proper infrastructure so that it can be successful. And you're talking about barriers in the infrastructure. So that's really important to me. So thank you very much.
There was a lot of advocacy last year to get that law changed. so that students can access, I think, to reduce the age to 14 so that students can access mental health supports without a parental consent. And so I think that's important. There's also at Hopkins, we've instituted wellness centers that don't require that, and they're accessible to students. And a lot of it, the supports are student led. But yeah, to get that intensive therapist, you still legally in the state of Minnesota need parental consent.
Do you know why that is the case? I'm in Colorado. And I don't even know what the law is in Colorado, but you know, I have to be aware.
Yeah, I mean, it's the law, so we have to go through the legislature to change it.
I realize that. What I was asking was, do you know why the law is there?
No, I mean, I think it's just historically because of, you know, HIPAA and legal age of consent. I mean, there's a whole bunch of
Okay.
things wrapped up in it.
I know that in Minnesota in the 70s, there were some incidences with parents actually being put into mental health institutions by their own children. And so because of that, they really were exploring what the laws were at that time. And a lot of some very strict things got put in place in reaction to what was going on.
In Colorado, the age of consent is 15 for mental health services. So students 15 and
Okay.
older can consent without a parental.
Thanks. But I really want it K through 12. So, you know, it really has to start when you're young. And key to that is really engaging the parents so that they learn the skills as well. So.
Lori, how are we doing on time?
Yeah.
Just so we can keep rolling.
Yeah, we are running a little extra time, but that's okay. We can keep going. I do really love these conversations and really hope for more conversations. We do have a lot more for us to discuss about. So I could just quickly share screen here, and we can look at these responses. So while everyone was talking, I was taking notes for these, but let's look at slide 2. And I want us to just think about what are common themes. You can put it in the chat or say it out loud.
Do the wellness centers have people in the school?
Sorry, what was that, Nancy?
Do wellness centers have people in the school? Or do you have to actually go to the center?
I think the wellness, I'm not sure who put this one down, but this one, the wellness initiative, I believe was
Oh, yeah.
so yeah, I see a lot of centers, wellness centers.
And I heard it a lot too, like in some of the conversations. I think the some of the wellness centers are actually separated from some of them are not involved with the school, so it'll be like a separate thing that you would just go to, that it'd probably be nearby the school or something linked with the school, but I don't know that it's like connected.
Okay,
or
so as a student, do you feel that when you need help, you want it right then? Or is it something that you could go to a wellness center after school, or if there's a lunch break, if it was close by, if there was transportation?
I would say like it'd definitely be somewhere where I'd probably want to go like right away, and I'd probably want like easy access to like, you know, get there and get back.
Thanks, Darian.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, yes, I can speak about the wellness centers at Hopkins if people want to hear about how those work. so they started in their physical space in our secondary schools, so our junior highs and our high school. And they're when we started them, they were staffed by a school social worker or therapist or staff member trained in student mental health. And what we found through that first year, that students were not accessing it as much as we had hoped, or as much as we knew the need was in the schools. And so we worked with student groups to kind of transform what they were and how they were accessed. And so as those centers have gone through the transformation process, they've become more of a place where students can hang out and connect with one another. A lot of the supports that go through the wellness center are student-led supports, and they really work with and for some of our student groups that are around issues that typically mental health can be a part of that, but they also focus on, you know, physical wellness and the interplay between, you know, very much a holistic view of what healthy means. And so, and of course, during COVID, a lot of those supports had to go virtual. Now that our schools have opened up a bit, we're seeing that, you know, the social distancing has made those spaces feel different than they did before COVID. So just a lot of transformation and working with students to make sure that their spaces that are useful for them, but still create a space in which they feel safe to talk about what they're struggling with.
So what I would like to share is, you know, I'm Elise. I'm from South Dakota. I work with the Flanders Santee Sioux tribe and the project assistant, but I did.
Sorry, Elise, you sort of went out there.
Sorry, I think it got
You guys muted me.
Sorry about that.
I was like, why did I give you?
So
Okay, so
sorry.
back to what I was saying. No, that's okay. It's all good. Just the differences of like working and living here in South Dakota on the reservation and then moving to Colorado. I just moved back about 2 years ago, and I have a 12-year-old son, and it took him, we've been back about 2 years back to a reservation, but we did live in Colorado. So when we moved down there, he was about 8. In that perspective, the school system down there has a, they called it a Husky regulation station for the elementary school. And it was set specifically for, well, how it came about is my son brought a little sand jar home, and I didn't know what it was from. So I began to ask him, but they called it a regulation station. But what it was is where the kids were getting frustrated and teachers are getting frustrated, they could go and take a 15-minute break, and they would teach them how to understand what emotions that they're feeling. So they're, you know, getting frustrated, angry, sad, happy, to help the children identify what types of emotions they're dealing with, go down, do a little bit of, you know, get a little break and go back to the classroom really calm and real, just basically like refresh. Not only was it for the students, it was for the teachers. And being Native American myself, I understand some of the Native American psychology is different than the non-Indian world. We think very differently. So I was asked to come on in and talk to the school because they're struggling with connecting with Native American children that come from the reservation. And so that's where I was able to go in and give them a little bit of understanding of how it was here in South Dakota with my son's reaction, not wanting to talk, not having that trust issue because of the mental health of the school system he had came from. You know, and I was able to talk with him and tell him to let his walls down. Not a lot of things. It took time. It took time. He's slowly bringing those walls back up because we moved back home, unfortunately, because they don't have the same type of mental health services or the open-mindedness of understanding the diversity in children and the different psychological things that they deal with at home when they go to the school. One thing that South Dakota, our legislature did pass, but for it's offered, but all students don't need to know when it comes to history is Those Shakti Shakoin is our 7 council fires. We need to reach out to the state legislatures. You know, if we're not getting the funding or the things that we need to help the children be successful, we need to reach out and get these resources. We all are US citizens and we pay tax dollars. That's what these tax dollars are for. You know, so there's more power in numbers if we can get together and find a way systematically where our legislatures, you know, can put these into law, where you can help the teachers understand the psychological mindset of what is going on with these children, not these children, all of our children, you know, and have that open mindedness, but also instead of just giving them an option where it can be offered, make it mandatory where the public school system has to incorporate different types of education in there so these children don't have to deal with the psychological backlash of, we know our history and our culture, but it is not written in the United States history. So those are some of the issues to give a point of view from a Native American aspect with the education system, from starting from kindergarten all the way to high school. We know our stories, but when the children talk in social studies about, let's say, the Dakota 38 that were hung in Mankato, Makato, our children know that, but you have our teachers saying, nope, it didn't happen. Why? Because it's not in black and white. Those really do affect the children's mental health and their psychological well-being of, you know, your teacher not giving you credit for the things that you know. Why? Because it's not in black and white. We also got to remember the different obstacles and things that each culture has to go through, you know, and our Department of Education is the one that writes the education. You know, so we got to think a lot of those different types of things and perspectives to put into the viewpoint. There's a lot that is not taught in Native American history, not in US history, the psychological thought of how Asian people think, Black people think, Hispanics think, Euro-Americans, how they think. It all has to do with your culture, you know, things like that. So for our education system to help the children become more, let their walls down and want to learn and to continue, is to create that positive support for all.
Thank you, Elias.
For Darian, Jawaria, and Lori, I wanted to ask if there were an app that you could record how you were feeling at that moment in time if you were upset, and it would go out to your parents and a counselor, et cetera. Would you feel comfortable using something like that?
Yeah, I would definitely be comfortable with using something like that. And I also like to thank Elise for sharing such a powerful, um, like such powerful words for us to hear. Like I think that really resonates with what we want to get across, is to share these resources with young people and to give what these young people need. And like going back to what Nancy's saying, is that like we really want to push it back to like kindergarten if we can, because it does not stop at like the age of 15, 14. It goes much deeper than that. And I think that's what we really want to push, to to have people realize that mental health doesn't start at a certain age, or it doesn't stop at a certain age. It keeps going. It's like a cycle. It keeps coming and going. And we have to realize that in order to give these resources and make things happen, and just kind of thinking about what we've all been saying is, again, like, how do we make these resources happen?
Yeah, I agree. And I just wanted to thank Eliza again too, because like that was a very powerful perspective. And a lot of people don't think of it from many different aspects than other than just like kind of like in a straight line, like mental health in general. And it's I think it's a big deal for like it to be connected between mental health and cultural awareness. So like your mental health, not based on your culture, but like involved with your culture, if you understand what I mean. But it's very powerful. The story about your son being like getting that help at a young age, that sounds amazing to me. And I feel like that's exactly kind of like the thing that we want to like bring to everyone, to be available to like everyone around like the nation. And I feel like if you start at a young age, it would make it easier for you to be like more comfortable with being like, I guess I would say being vulnerable, or like letting yourself share with more than more than what you would if you didn't start at a young age, I guess.
Thank you again for everyone who's shared. We're just gonna keep moving on. It is almost 2:30, and I will pass this to Natasha. Natasha, you're muted.
Thank you, Lori. Foster an environment in your school where students are comfortable advocating for their needs and speaking about their mental health and other needs they may have. So that is mentorship. Every student in the building should have access to an adult that they trust who is able to support them with more than just academics. So as a lot of you guys have mentioned, like mental health centers or clinics, those need to be offered on a much bigger scale without parental consent or having that pushback to a much younger age. Teach students and educators why it's important to listen to other voices when they advocate for themselves. So mental health / suicide awareness. These problems can obviously be prevented. I don't want to say problems, that's such a negative word, but some situations can very clearly be prevented if the resources are simply given. So we really need to work hard on providing those resources to everyone. And that includes staff as well, because it's hard to expect somebody to give out those resources for students if they are not receiving that for themselves. So it needs to be a much bigger all around thing for everyone receiving mental health resources, not just the students. So I'll pass it off to Lori to close.
Yes, and with that, we are officially closing. We do not have time for questions, but this is our social media. It's just Bridgemakers Minnesota, and our website is right here. We can drop it here as well. Let's see. It's just bridgemakersminnesota.org. You can go ahead and check us out. Send us an email if you're interested in getting to know more about the work that we do. And with that, we can go ahead and close.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you sharing your time with us, Natasha, Lori, Darian, and all the Bridgemaker team. I know if people have follow-ups, they can email you directly. And I did post a link to a survey. If you could share with us your feedback, we would really appreciate it. And we hope to see you at other breakout sessions today and for our closing session tomorrow. So thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.